keeping people safe, well, that's the job of these two gentlemen here in our studio right now, Sheriff Matt Saxton, Undersheriff Tim Hurtt. Good morning to you guys.
Good morning, Tim.
Good to have you back in the studio again today. I wish it was on a bright and cheery topic, but I can't remember if we've ever had you in on that. Unfortunately, but human trafficking is what we're talking about, and there's an event coming up this week we're going to be talking about. But when I hear human trafficking, I'm thinking about these TV shows where somebody out in west somewhere is shipping somebody off to the Far East or something, and it doesn't have anything to do with us around here. I'm wrong, though, I'm afraid, right?
Well,
go ahead, Chair.
Go ahead.
All right. Yes, you are. We typically, when we see human trafficking, we often think that it happens someplace else in the United States or someplace else in the world. We often we strongly associate it with foreign countries. But truth be told, human trafficking, which is simply modern-day slavery, occurs here in the United States every day. And it occurs in several different forms. We have sex trafficking, we have domestic servitude, and labor trafficking, and those things happen here every day.
It's just unbelievable that it could still happen, especially, given all the discussion about slavery, all of our history about slavery, and it's just a different, it's still slavery.
Yes, it is. The issue is it comes to us in a soft form. For instance, our labor trafficking may happen in businesses that we frequent every day and we just don't see. The sex trafficking is not something that the average person sees, nor the domestic servitude. So if we don't necessarily see it, or if we see it in a soft form, we may not even recognize it.
I see. So that's the tough thing, and that's what we're trying to do, is educate people on how to spot signs that these things are happening.
Yes. Some of the signs that are consistent with those who are victims of human trafficking, there's going to be some type of insecurity. Some of the indicators: does a victim act fearful, anxious, depressed? Does a victim defer to another person to speak? Are they clothed properly with children? If you run in, maybe suspect an incident with children in the outside, do they have their shoes on? Are they allowed to have their coats when they're cold? Adults or children, is there always someone who's willing to speak for them? And are they always left? Are they never left unattended? Those are some of the indicators that can be for human trafficking.
So there's a huge psychological component. People these abusers, they learn to control people through psychology, and I'm not talking about brainwashing, although I guess that probably could eventually happen, but basically they just wear people down to where they feel like they have no defenses.
Well, what it is that there are certain potential risk factors which make a person more vulnerable for human trafficking, such as poverty, domestic violence, homelessness, runaway, mental health issues, sexual abuse, and things like that. And so people who have been hurt in the past may often seek for some form of comforting, and those who recruit people for human trafficking may play on those harms that people have experienced in their earlier life.
In fact, there's been a case in Calhoun County that I've noticed, it may still be in the courts, that a gentleman from Homer allegedly picked up a prostitute who was drug addicted, and brought her over to his place, and she ended up just living there and basically being a sex slave, but sort of, she sort of complied. But when you're drug addicted, I guess all of a sudden it's pretty easy to get enslaved.
Yeah. Sheriff, do you want to come?
Well, and those type of things happen more often than we know about. Unfortunately, this issue of human trafficking or slavery is that drastically underreported, and we don't really have good stats here in the United States on the number. Some of the estimates are that 17 to 20,000 foreign nationals are brought into the U.S. For human trafficking, for work, for sex each year. So that's another reason that we need to have more secure borders as well, is to help stop this human slavery.
Yeah, and we see TV shows where, affluent people are hiring these foreign nationals to be their housekeepers or their groundskeepers and these type of things. It may not be the classic type of slavery that we're thinking about, but it's still, one person taking advantage of another.
And another one of the estimated numbers is that $32 billion a year industry in human trafficking. It's second only to the sale of drugs and guns on the criminal side of things. So it's a $32 billion industry.
Wow. What's this community gathering that's happening this week?
The At the Crossroads Human Trafficking Task Force is holding a gathering on Thursday, the 25th. It starts at 9:30 in the morning and goes through 12. And that particular morning gathering is for the working professional, to bring them up to speed, so on and so forth, on the latest trends and information in regards to human trafficking. And then there's an evening presentation that starts at 7 o'clock for the community forum, where there'll be a question and answer session. But we will also show the movie Break the Chain, which was produced and brought together by the Michigan Human Trafficking Task Force. It was directed by Laura Swanson. It is an absolutely phenomenal film that you should see that will raise the awareness on human trafficking. And it also portrays two victims out of Michigan. One is as close as Jackson County.
Wow.
And so I'm a co-chair on that committee along with Danielle Kostrad-Boyd. And that's what we're doing this Thursday, to raise awareness and also to move into action is what we're trying to do. So
both in the same location?
Both in the same location, Crossroads Church there in Marshall. The Low Ridge family, the pastors there, Scott and Claire Low Ridge, have been very generous in opening up their church to our task force when we didn't have a home, and that's where it will be housed. We'll have the meeting on both meetings on Thursday.
And the flyer I'm looking at has 12 pictures of people who are victims. And, I mean, what a cross-section. It could be anybody.
It can be anyone. Human trafficking is not limited to a gender, a race, a socioeconomic status. It could be anyone in human trafficking. In fact, when you listen to the victims on the film, when you listen to the people talk on the film, you realize that this is widespread, more than we know.
When we come back in a moment, I want to ask you how the internet figures into all of this, both as a tool for you guys, but also as a weapon for the abusers. Talking with Sheriff Matt Saxton, Undersheriff Tim Hurtt, and human trafficking, our subject. You wouldn't think that would be a problem in Battle Creek, Michigan, but our location and everything, it is a prime location for activity, right?
We there's certain places that actually support human trafficking and support the recruitment. Some of those things, as listed, are hotels and motels. Human trafficking can occur in a home, malls and shopping centers, house parties, internet and social media. We have truck stops in our jurisdiction, the street itself, and also large community events. So those can happen in our community. We also, our county has two intersections that cross I-94 and I-69. I think we have approximately nearly 80 miles of interstate. And a lot of people pass from one community to another by use of the interstate. And so we have places that would welcome human trafficking. We have rest areas throughout the community, our county, so on and so forth. So, yes, we do. It can happen here.
What about the internet? I imagine that the internet is used for sex trafficking a great deal.
On the internet side of things, I mean, it's been a positive to law enforcement and a negative to law enforcement. I mean, we're able to investigate these type of things and look into trafficking and things that are occurring on the internet locally. But on that same note, the trafficker, or that slave owner, for lack of a better word, is using the internet to push their labor trafficking or to push their sex trafficking. And it's estimated that 27 million people worldwide are in slavery today and human trafficking. So
it's
just a huge number.
And, you know, we hear these stories all the time about these teenage girls that get online and they get into a relationship with somebody and it turns out to be some scrungy older guy. And but I think probably a lot of times that could actually lead to human trafficking.
You know, and I get questions all the time. There's these videos about somebody sitting out in front of a grocery store online or something saying, I was out here the other day and they tried to abduct somebody. We don't see that locally. We do get the calls. Somebody met somebody online and they go meet them face to face 3 states away. And then we get that missing person report.
Yeah,
that occurs not locally, but nationally on a daily basis, that the predators are finding people online and taking advantage of the access on the internet. We as parents need to watch our young adults and their use of social media and on the internet and make sure we know what our kids are doing on the internet.
Makes me really glad that I don't have to do that, because I don't know how you do it. You know, how do you give your kid enough space and show them trust, but at the same time supervise all of that? What a juggling act that must be.
Yeah, I'd like to go back about 20 years and get rid of the cell phones.
Yeah, no kidding. That would be nice. But I see what you're saying though. I mean, why would a criminal yank somebody off the street when they can go online and trick them into coming to them?
That they can do it sitting in their basement, just trolling online, and unfortunately, it occurs every day.
Yeah, and then perhaps just meet that person, get their confidence, maybe make them think that, oh, this guy could be the one, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're being shipped off somewhere.
Yeah, there are. I often would tell people there are 2 ways to manipulate. One, I can manipulate you with fear, or I can manipulate you with kindness and promises. And when you look at the traffickers in the initial phases, when they recruit with promises. Most of the promises are empty. They're designed in a way to lure the victim away from security, get them alone, isolated in another state where you don't have any resources, no one to call, so on and so forth. And then the manipulation turns to force and coercion. Like the sheriff said, you can't be active enough in keeping a relationship with your children. And I look at it as opposed to checking on them, just building a relationship with your children where there's open communication. You have to have an active parenting role when they're young. And I have grown children now. I was active when they were young, and then I became kind of passive as they became older because they were of age to make their own decisions. But I always told my kids when they were young, it's your room in my house, and there is no expectation of privacy. And when they knew that, and I would from time to time check things and keep the relationship with them and explain that the rules are to keep you safe. And they grew up to be fine young men. So I confirm what the sheriff says. We have to have an active role in taking care of our children.
Once again, this Thursday, it's going to be at Crossroads Church and Ministries on 27 North, 717 U.S. Highway 27 North in Marshall. And for the professionals, that's going to be what, 9 to 12:30?
9:30 to 12. And then for the community, we'll start at 7 o'clock. We'll show the film Break the Chains, approximately 1 hour. And then we'll have questions and answers after that.
Boy, sounds like a very informative conference. We do appreciate you putting that on, Undersheriff Hurtt. And Sheriff Saxton, thanks for coming in this morning and talk a little bit about this problem.
We're glad to. And I'd leave you with a quote from Kevin Bale's book, The Slaver Next Door. The chains of bondage are formed by the victim's own inability to see beyond her prison. And often she won't even know she's a victim of a crime. Oftentimes our victims of human trafficking have no idea they're being enslaved or a victim.
Wow, that's something to think about. Thanks again, Sheriff. Undersheriff, we'll talk to you again next time.